Remember, their classical example of tyranny would be maybe Caesar. Caesar, who at one point or another had all power. But you split up Caesar, first three ways, executive, legislative, and judicial. And then you split them up two ways again, federal and state, or federal, state, and local. And Caesar becomes someone who is a lot more manageable because his powers can be checked against himself. And so that's exactly what they did. Or in most high schools, unfortunately not even in most colleges, and unfortunately not even in many law schools. Fortunately they did at mine. But we also discussed this sort of thing around the dinner table from the time I was about 8 years old. That's sad and a little strange, I know, but that's okay. Stranger things have happened. Article 1, Section 8 gives Congress the power to declare war, to create an army and a navy, and provide rules for their governance. It gives Congress the power to regulate interstate and foreign trade, to coin money, to establish a uniform system of weights and measures. Just a few basic other powers, including power to make bankruptcy laws, the power to protect trademarks, copyrights, and patents, and other related powers. But as you can tell by this list, it's a list that isn't broad, it isn't expansive. It doesn't encompass broad general purpose powers like the power to make life better for all people. It doesn't even include the power to provide for the general welfare of the United States. That's a common misnomer, a common misunderstanding based on a misreading of Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1. These are all very limited powers. And you will not find in Article 1, Section 8. By the way, if you forget everything else I say today, please don't forget about Article 1, Section 8. Don't forget to go home and read it whenever you get the chance. You can read it in about 2 minutes. And it's almost completely free of legalese. They used very plain English, most of which is very relevant still today. You will not find in Article 1, Section 8 the power to spread the wealth around, to redistribute wealth. Nor will you find the power to bail out failing banks or bail out failing auto companies that have made poor decisions with contracts with big unions. You won't find the power to make everything fair in life. What you will find in the way of fairness is a system that is itself fair, in that it gives everyone equal opportunities to create and preserve wealth. But you will not find the power to redistribute wealth. That's a power that Congress has been claiming to have for a long time, and the courts, unfortunately, have allowed Congress to get away with it. But the fact that the courts have allowed Congress to get away with it should not be misunderstood to mean that it is constitutional. You see, each and every senator and representative takes an oath to the Constitution, swearing to uphold it and protect it and defend it. And in my mind, that oath encompasses more than just a statement of loyalty to the principle that you'll do whatever you can get away with according to the courts. It means you'll support those principles, those foundational, elemental principles, upon which this document was based, and upon which the Founding Fathers agreed, and those foundational principles that have enabled our country to become as great as it is. It is in spite of our Congress's refusal to limit its own power, and not because of it, that our country has remained as strong as it has been for as long as it has. And it's time for us to return to those principles. It's time for us specifically to return to an era when members of Congress will read this document and limit their power by it, voluntarily restrain their power, and say not, what can I do according to what I can get away with according to the courts, but what should I do? How should I restrain my power? That's the first thing I want to do differently as your U.S. Senator. And the one thing that I think would make the biggest single difference in our government is if we had members of Congress who would restrain their power, and that's the first promise I make. I will restore the constitutional debate on limited government in the U.S. Congress, in that I will not vote for a single bill or resolution that I can't reasonably justify based on the text and original understanding of the Constitution. Another way of putting it, if I can't picture myself having a conversation with James Madison, explaining with a straight face, in good faith, why that matches with the text and original founding era understanding of the Constitution, I will vote no. And I will protest against it, and I will do my best to shame those who ignore the Constitution in supporting it. That's point one. My other points as to why I want to be your senator all relate to that, and all relate to restoring limited government. Point two, it's time to end the era of deficit spending, because it's deficit spending that facilitates expansion of government power beyond the constitutional boundaries established by the founding generation. Deficit spending, you might say, is the midwife of government expansion, because it enables politicians to accomplish the dual possible. I can bring home more benefits for you, but you're not going to have to pay for it. Why? Well, because we're going to have your unborn grandchildren pay for it. People don't think about it at the time that they're putting up with that, but that's exactly what they're doing. In the process of doing that, we create this $14 trillion debt, and that just simply isn't right. If I went out and I took out a debt to the tune of $50,000 to $100,000 in the name of your unborn grandchild, that would be fraud. I would get caught, they would try me, they would prosecute me, they would try me, I would be convicted, and I would serve hard time for that. But for some reason, when Congress does it, they don't call that a criminal offense, they just call that business as usual, and we continue to sustain them over and over and over again. That has to stop, and it has to stop right now. The way it stops is by pushing through a constitutional amendment requiring Congress to spend no more in any given year than the money that it takes in that year, and also limiting Congress to spending no more than 15% of gross domestic product in a particular year. That would fix that problem, and it would help restore constitutionally limited government. So, we'll restore the constitutional debate. We'll push for the balanced budget amendment and end the era of deficit spending. Next, we have to reform the tax system. I describe deficit spending as the midwife of government expansion. The other midwife assistant for government expansion is our distorted tax system. Almost 1/2 of American households pay absolutely nothing in federal income tax. Not a dime. Even while many or most of those people receive substantial government benefits, sometimes cash or quasi-cash payments back from the government, but they pay nothing. And then 40% of American households, probably represented by most or all of us in this room, pay 97% of the federal budget. 97%. Here's why that's a problem, and here's why I fight to change that in Congress. People make decisions that are very different depending on who's paying the bill. Let's suppose that all of us in this room decided that we wanted to go to lunch today together. Where we would go for lunch and what we would order would probably vary pretty significantly depending on who was paying the bill. I'd like to make a motion. I hereby move that when we do go to lunch today, hypothetical exercise, we have my friends Boyd Matheson and Connie Smith pay the entire bill. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Nay. The ayes have it. Okay, so what this means is we're going to Le Cap. And we're ordering appetizers. I'm going to order the lobster special and I have 2 desserts because, you know, I'll be hungry by then after I eat my fill of donuts later this morning. So we just voted for them to pay the whole bill. And that makes it really easy to go to Le Cap and order whatever we want. All of a sudden the exercise becomes very different if we decide that each of us will pay an individualized share of the whole bill. A pro rata share, a percentage share, based on the whole bill. We would probably vote in that circumstance to go to McDonald's and order the cheeseburger. Maybe if we're feeling really crazy, the quarter pounder, or some people might order a salad and a water, and that's about it. Because if we're going to be paying the bill, we would order differently. The same is true with our government. When you tell half of American households they don't have to pay anything, and then you tell the next 10 to 13% of from there that they don't have to pay very much at all, you tell 40% of the population, again, probably represented by most or all of us in this room, they have to pay 97% of the bill. It's not very fair to that 40%, because the 60% can gang up on the 40% and say, send the bill to them. We want more government, but send the bill to them.